Oprah Winfrey. There are few names in the world that carry the weight, the recognition, and the emotional resonance of Oprah Winfrey. For decades, she has been more than just a television host or a media mogul. She has been a symbol of hope, resilience, and transformation. Her story is woven into the fabric of American culture, her voice a source of comfort and inspiration for millions. But behind the dazzling success, the billion-dollar empire, and the iconic status lies a journey marked by pain, loss, and heartbreak that even her most devoted fans may never fully comprehend. At 71, Oprah Winfrey's life is a testament to the heights a human being can reach, and the depths of tragedy that can haunt even the most celebrated among us. To understand the tragedy of Oprah Winfrey, we must first look beyond the magazine covers, the standing ovations, and the golden accolades. We must look back to a childhood that was anything but golden, to a little girl born in rural Mississippi in 1954, whose earliest memories were shaped not by comfort but by struggle. Oprah's mother, Vernita Lee, was a teenage housemaid, and her father, Vernon Winfrey, a coal miner and barber. Poverty was not just a backdrop, it was the air she breathed, the reality that shaped every day. Raised by her grandmother, Hattie Mae, in a small, wooden house with no running water, Oprah's world was one of scarcity and survival. She wore dresses made from potato sacks, endured the sting of ridicule from other children, and learned early that life would not hand her anything easily. But even in those bleakest days there was a spark, a sense that she was meant for something more. Hattie Mae, a woman of deep faith, taught Oprah to read before she was 3, and the Bible became her first window to a world beyond her own. In the church, Oprah found her first audience, reciting verses with a power and conviction that left grown men and women in awe. Yet the applause was fleeting and the hardships relentless. When her grandmother fell ill, Oprah was sent to live with her mother in Milwaukee, a move that would mark the beginning of her darkest years. Milwaukee was a world away from the rural South, but for Oprah, it was not a world of opportunity, it was a world of chaos. Her mother worked long hours, leaving Oprah in the care of relatives and family friends. It was during these years that she endured unspeakable abuse, molested by cousins, an uncle, and a family friend. The pain was compounded by silence, by the shame that kept her from speaking out, by the sense that she was utterly alone. At just 14, after years of trauma, Oprah became pregnant. The baby, a boy, was born prematurely and died shortly after birth. It was a loss that would haunt her for the rest of her life, a wound that fame and fortune could never fully heal. Yet, even as the world seemed determined to break her, Oprah refused to be defined by her suffering. She found solace in books and learning, in the power of her own voice. At East Nashville High School, she became an honors student, winning oratory contests and earning a scholarship to Tennessee State University. Radio was her first break, and by 19 she was reading the news on a local station. Her warmth, her empathy, and her ability to connect with people set her apart. But the scars of her past were never far behind. Every success was shadowed by the memories of what she had endured, by the knowledge that the world could be both cruel and indifferent. As Oprah's career began to rise, so too did the expectations and the pressures. In Baltimore, she co-anchored the evening news, but her emotional style was deemed unprofessional by her male colleagues. She was demoted, humiliated, and told she would never make it in television. But Oprah's resilience was forged in fire. She took a job hosting a low-rated morning talk show, and within months, her authenticity and vulnerability transformed it into a local sensation. The world was beginning to see what Oprah's grandmother had always known: this was a woman destined to change lives. The rise of Oprah Winfrey was not a sudden explosion, but a slow, determined climb, one marked by setbacks, doubts, and the constant threat of failure. When she arrived in Chicago in 1984 to host AM Chicago, the show was languishing at the bottom of the ratings. The city was skeptical, the industry dismissive. But Oprah brought something that television had never truly seen before: radical honesty. She spoke openly about her struggles with weight, her insecurities, her pain. She listened to her guests with a depth of empathy that made even the most hardened hearts soften. Within months, AM Chicago soared to the top of the ratings, and by 1986 it was reborn as The Oprah Winfrey Show, a program that would redefine daytime television and, in many ways, American culture itself. But with every step forward, the shadows of Oprah's past followed close behind. The world saw the confident host, the woman who could make presidents cry and celebrities confess their deepest secrets. Few saw the nights she spent alone, wrestling with the ghosts of her childhood, the anxiety that fame would never be enough to fill the emptiness left by years of neglect and abuse. The more she gave to her audience, the more she felt the ache of what she had lost. The applause was thunderous, but the silence afterward was deafening. As The Oprah Winfrey Show became a cultural juggernaut, Oprah's life became a paradox. She was surrounded by millions yet often felt profoundly alone. She built an empire, Harpo Productions, a magazine, a book club that could turn unknown authors into bestsellers. But the higher she climbed, the more precarious her position felt. The pressure to be perfect, to be a role model, to never show weakness was suffocating. Every misstep was magnified, every rumor a potential scandal. The tabloids feasted on her struggles with weight, her relationships, her business decisions. For every triumph there was a chorus of critics waiting to tear her down. Yet, Oprah's greatest strength was her willingness to be vulnerable. She spoke openly about her battles with food addiction, her struggles with self-worth, her complicated relationship with her mother. She invited the world into her pain and in doing so, gave millions permission to confront their own. But this openness came at a cost. The more she revealed, the more exposed she felt. The world's expectations became a cage, and the woman who had once found freedom in her voice now found herself trapped by it. Behind the scenes, Oprah's personal life was marked by heartbreak and loss. Her relationship with Stedman Graham, though enduring, was often the subject of speculation and gossip. The two never married, a decision that Oprah has said was rooted in her fear of losing herself, of repeating the cycles of abandonment and betrayal that had defined her early years. She longed for family, for the sense of belonging that had always eluded her, but found it difficult to trust, to let anyone all the way in. Her friendships, most notably with Gayle King, became her lifeline, a chosen family that offered the stability her own could not. But even these bonds were tested by the demands of fame. Oprah's schedule was relentless, her responsibilities overwhelming. She worked long hours, traveled constantly, and carried the weight of an empire on her shoulders. The cost was exhaustion, both physical and emotional. There were times when she considered walking away, when the burden of being Oprah felt too heavy to bear. But each time she returned to the stage, to the cameras, to the audience that had become her extended family. As the years passed, the tragedies in Oprah's life did not fade, they evolved. The loss of her infant son remained a silent ache, a grief that surfaced in unexpected moments. Her mother's death in 2018 reopened old wounds, forcing Oprah to confront the complicated legacy of their relationship. The world saw the public tributes, the carefully chosen words, but not the private tears, the nights spent questioning whether she had done enough, whether she had truly healed. The world often measures success in numbers, ratings, dollars, awards, followers. By every metric, Oprah Winfrey was a phenomenon. She became the first black female billionaire in history, her influence stretching from the White House to the smallest living rooms in America. She launched careers, changed laws, and inspired a generation to read, to dream, to believe in the possibility of transformation. But the higher she soared, the more isolated she became. The tragedy of Oprah Winfrey is not just in the pain she endured, but in the loneliness that came with her extraordinary ascent. Fame for Oprah was a double-edged sword. It gave her a platform to change lives, but it also built walls around her. She could no longer walk down the street without being mobbed, could not trust the intentions of those who sought her company. Every relationship was shadowed by suspicion. Did they love her, or did they love what she could do for them? The joy of connection, so central to her work, became fraught with anxiety in her personal life. She once confessed that she could count her true friends on one hand, and that even in a room full of admirers, she sometimes felt utterly alone. The pressure to maintain her image was relentless. Oprah's struggles with weight became a national obsession, her body scrutinized and dissected by the media. Every pound gained or lost was headline news, every diet a public spectacle. She tried everything, fasts, trainers, new age therapies, each time hoping that this would be the answer, that this would finally bring her peace. But the battle was never just with food. It was with the emptiness inside, the hunger for love and acceptance that had been denied her as a child. She spoke candidly about her pain, her failures, her shame, and in doing so, helped millions feel less alone. But the vulnerability that made her beloved also left her exposed, raw, and sometimes broken. As her empire grew, so did the demands on her time and energy. Harpo Studios became a machine, churning out content, managing brands, and employing hundreds. Oprah was at the center of it all, the sun around which everything revolved. But the cost was immense. She worked long hours, often at the expense of her health and happiness. There were days when she felt like a prisoner of her own success, unable to rest, unable to escape the expectations that came with her name. The world saw the power, the wealth, the influence, but not the exhaustion, the anxiety, the fear of letting everyone down. The end of the Oprah Winfrey Show in 2011 was both a triumph and a heartbreak. After 25 years, Oprah chose to step away from the stage that had defined her life. The final episode was a celebration, a farewell, a moment of closure. But for Oprah it was also a leap into the unknown. She had built her identity around the show, around the daily connection with her audience. Without it, she faced a void, a question of who she was, and what her life would mean without the constant validation of millions. OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network, was her next great venture, but it too was fraught with challenges. The network struggled in its early years, facing criticism, financial losses, and doubts about whether Oprah's magic could translate to a new era of media. The setbacks were public, the failures dissected by the same press that had once celebrated her every move. Oprah persevered, reinventing the network, finding new ways to connect, but the struggle took its toll. The woman who had once seemed unstoppable now faced the reality that even legends can falter. Through it all, Oprah's compassion remained her guiding light. She continued to give, building schools in South Africa, funding scholarships, supporting countless causes. But the more she gave, the more she felt the weight of the world's suffering. Empathy, her greatest gift, became a source of pain. She carried the stories of others inside her, sometimes unable to sleep, sometimes overwhelmed by the enormity of what she could not fix. As Oprah Winfrey entered her 60s, the world saw a woman at the height of her power, an icon whose influence stretched across continents, whose every word could move markets and minds. But beneath the surface, the cost of a lifetime spent in the public eye was becoming more apparent. The relentless pace, the emotional labor, and the burden of being a symbol for so many had left their mark. Oprah began to speak more openly about the toll that fame and responsibility had taken on her health, her spirit, and her sense of self. The years brought new challenges, some visible, others hidden from the cameras. The loss of her beloved dogs, whom she called her fur children, left her grieving in ways that surprised even herself. The passing of close friends and mentors, including Maya Angelou, left Oprah feeling unmoored, as if the pillars that had supported her through life's storms were slowly disappearing. She spoke of sleepless nights, of anxiety that would not let her rest, of a loneliness that fame could not cure. The world saw the glamorous events, the red carpets, the interviews with royalty and presidents, but not the quiet moments of doubt, the tears shed in solitude, the questions that lingered long after the applause had faded. Her relationship with her mother, Vernita Lee, remained complicated until the end. Oprah provided for her mother, ensuring she never wanted for anything, but the emotional distance between them was never fully bridged. When Vernita passed away in 2018, Oprah was left to grapple with unresolved feelings, gratitude, resentment, love, and sorrow all tangled together. She spoke candidly about the pain of not having the kind of mother-daughter bond she had longed for, about the ache of knowing that some wounds never truly heal, no matter how much time passes or how much success is achieved. Oprah's own health became a growing concern. Years of stress, emotional eating, and the demands of her career had taken their toll. She faced thyroid issues, battled with her weight, and experienced moments of deep fatigue. She began to prioritize self-care, embracing meditation, exercise, and therapy, but the journey was ongoing. In interviews, she admitted that the struggle for balance was constant, that the pressure to be Oprah never really went away. The world expected her to be strong, wise, and unbreakable, but she was at her core as vulnerable as anyone else. The tragedy of Oprah Winfrey is not just in the pain she endured, but in the sacrifices she made along the way. She chose not to have children, a decision she has described as both liberating and bittersweet. She poured her energy into her work, her philanthropy, and her audience, but sometimes wondered what it would have been like to raise a family of her own. The longing for connection, for a sense of belonging, remained a quiet undercurrent in her life. Her home, though filled with beauty and comfort, could feel empty at times, a palace built on the foundation of dreams, but haunted by the echoes of what might have been. Yet, even in the face of loss and longing, Oprah continued to rise. She reinvented herself again and again, finding new ways to inspire and uplift. She launched Super Soul Sunday, a series of conversations with spiritual leaders, thinkers, and visionaries. She wrote books, produced films, and used her platform to shine a light on issues that mattered. But the more she gave, the more she felt the weight of expectation. Every word was scrutinized, every decision debated. The freedom she had fought so hard to achieve sometimes felt like another kind of prison. As she approached her 70s, Oprah began to reflect more deeply on her legacy. She wondered what her life would mean when the cameras stopped rolling, when the world no longer looked to her for answers. The applause, once intoxicating, now seemed distant. The empire she had built was secure, but the sense of purpose that had driven her for so long was harder to find. In the quiet moments, she faced the same questions that haunt us all. Was it enough? Did I matter? Will I be remembered for who I was, or only for what I achieved? In the twilight of her career, Oprah Winfrey's life became a meditation on meaning, mortality, and the true cost of greatness. The world still saw her as a beacon of hope, a woman who had overcome impossible odds to become one of the most influential figures of her time. But for Oprah, the journey was no longer about conquering new heights. It was about coming to terms with the shadows that had always walked beside her. The tragedy of her story deepened not because of any single event, but because of the accumulation of loss, the realization that even the most extraordinary life is marked by heartbreaks that never fully fade. Oprah's days grew quieter, her circles smaller. She spent more time at her Montecito estate, surrounded by the beauty of nature, the comfort of her dogs, and the company of a few trusted friends. The pace of her life slowed, but the questions grew louder. She reflected on the sacrifices she had made, the relationships that faltered, the family she never had, the years spent chasing approval from a world that could never truly understand her. She spoke of the loneliness that comes with being a trailblazer, of the isolation that fame brings, of the longing for a simpler, more ordinary existence. Yet, even as she grappled with these feelings, Oprah remained committed to her mission of service. She continued to use her platform to amplify voices that might otherwise go unheard, to champion causes that mattered, to offer comfort and wisdom to those in need. Her philanthropy expanded, touching lives around the globe. She funded scholarships, built schools, and provided disaster relief. But the more she gave, the more she felt the weight of responsibility. The suffering of others became her own, and there were nights when the stories she heard left her sleepless, her heart heavy with empathy and sorrow. The world's expectations never truly diminished. Every public appearance, every interview, every social media post was analyzed and critiqued. Oprah's words carried immense power, but also immense risk. A single misstep could spark controversy. A moment of vulnerability could be twisted into scandal. The pressure to be perfect, to never falter, to always have the right answer was unrelenting. Oprah often spoke of the burden of being Oprah, a phrase that captured the paradox of her existence, adored by millions, yet often misunderstood, celebrated for her strength, yet judged for her humanity. Her relationship with Stedman Graham, though a source of stability, was not without its challenges. The two maintained a deep bond, but the demands of Oprah's career often kept them apart. They built a life together on their own terms, defying convention and expectation. Yet the absence of marriage and children sometimes left Oprah feeling adrift, caught between gratitude for the love she had and grief for the family she never created. She found solace in her friendship with Gayle King, a sisterhood that endured every storm. But even this could not fill every void. As Oprah approached her 71st year, the losses accumulated. Friends and mentors passed away, leaving her to mourn not just their absence, but the passing of an era. The world she had helped shape was changing, and she sometimes wondered if there was still a place for her in it. The applause grew fainter, the spotlight dimmer, and the sense of purpose that had once been so clear now seemed elusive. In interviews, she spoke of the importance of gratitude, of finding joy in small moments, of accepting the impermanence of all things. But beneath the wisdom was a quiet ache, a recognition that even the most remarkable life is touched by sorrow. The tragedy of Oprah Winfrey is not that she failed, but that she succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams and still found herself searching for meaning, for connection, for peace. Her story is a reminder that no amount of fame or fortune can shield us from the fundamental struggles of being human. At 71, Oprah stands as both a legend and a lesson, a woman who has given everything, and who in the end must face the same questions, the same heartbreaks as the rest of us. As the world looks at Oprah Winfrey at 71, it is easy to see only the legend, the billionaire, the media mogul, the woman whose name is synonymous with inspiration. But to truly understand her story is to see the human being behind the myth, the woman who has spent a lifetime turning her pain into purpose, her heartbreak into hope for others. The tragedy of Oprah Winfrey is not a single moment or a single loss, but the quiet accumulation of sorrow and sacrifice that comes with a life lived so publicly, so relentlessly, and so vulnerably. In her later years, Oprah has become more reflective, more open about the cost of her journey. She has spoken about the nights when loneliness pressed in, when the applause faded and she was left alone with her thoughts. She has admitted to moments of doubt, of wondering whether all the sacrifices were worth it, whether the love of millions could ever replace the love she longed for as a child. The world sees her as unbreakable, but Oprah knows better than anyone that strength is not the absence of pain, but the willingness to keep moving forward in spite of it. Her legacy is undeniable. She has changed the landscape of media, opened doors for countless others, and used her platform to shine a light on issues that matter. She has given away cars, built schools, and inspired millions to read, to heal, to dream. But the true measure of her impact is not in the headlines or the accolades, but in the quiet moments when someone finds comfort in her words, when a life is changed because she dared to share her own struggles. Oprah's greatest gift has always been her ability to connect, to make people feel seen, heard, and valued. Yet, the irony is that the woman who made the world feel less alone has often felt the most isolated. As she steps into the twilight of her life, Oprah is learning to embrace the peace she once thought was out of reach. She spends her mornings walking through her garden, her afternoons reading or writing, her evenings in quiet conversation with those she loves. She meditates, practices gratitude, and finds joy in the simple things: a sunrise, a good meal, the laughter of a friend. The empire she built still stands, but it is the inner world she now tends most carefully. She has learned at last that true fulfillment comes not from the applause of the world, but from the acceptance of oneself. Still, the shadows linger. The losses cannot be undone, the wounds cannot be erased. The tragedy of Oprah Winfrey is that she has given so much, and yet, like all of us, she must face the reality of aging, of saying goodbye, of letting go. She has spoken about her fears: the fear of being forgotten, the fear of not having done enough, the fear that her story will be reduced to headlines and sound bites. But she also knows that her life is a testament to resilience, to the power of vulnerability, to the beauty of rising again and again, no matter how many times the world tries to break you. For her fans, Oprah remains a beacon, a reminder that it is possible to overcome, to heal, to find meaning in the midst of suffering. For herself, she is learning to be gentle, to forgive, to let go of the need to be everything to everyone. She is at 71, both a legend and a woman, both triumphant and tragic, both whole and wounded. Her story is not just about what she has achieved, but about what she has survived, about the courage it takes to keep loving, keep giving, keep hoping, even when the world feels cold and indifferent. As you reflect on the life of Oprah Winfrey, ask yourself, what does it mean to be truly strong? Is it the ability to conquer the world, or the willingness to face your own heartache with honesty and grace? Oprah's journey shows us that the greatest tragedy is not in falling, but in never daring to rise. And in her rise again and again, we find not just the story of a superstar, but the story of what it means to be human.